This is BYU Sports Nation, presented by the BYU Store. Simulcast on BYUtv and BYU Radio. Now live from Studio C, it's Spencer Linton and Jarom Jordan.
BYU Sports Nation is live, your day-to-day play-by-play back in Studio C, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. It is Monday, August 8th. Wherever and however you have connected, great to have you with us. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up alongside a man who is fine-tuning his dodgeball skills, always, Jarom Jordan.
Dodgeball is really important in elementary school. Like, to be one of the, kings of the grade or whatever, you've really got to get involved there, right? Zach Wilson must have been good at dodgeball because over the weekend, at a public practice, he just sticks his hand out and catches the ball on the tip there. That was some real... Billy Madison dodgeball vibes there, as the New York Jets put out. He just catches it by the tip. That's an unbelievable catch. Also, it's Steve Young catching the pass to win the game against Missouri in the 1983 Holiday Bowl. I mean, you forget, Zach Wilson caught a couple of passes. Jaron Hall threw a pass to Zach Wilson against USC in 2019. Dude's an athlete.
Yeah, I believe the quote from Billy Madison when he does that one-handed stab of the dodgeball is, "Now you're all in really, really big trouble."
As if they weren't already, because an adult's playing against kids.
He's just throwing as hard as he can at these poor little kids.
Dodgeball reminds me of the movie Dodgeball. You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a dodgeball. And then also the Kenny Mayne and Stuart Scott Sports Center commercial where they're doing like a community activity at like a YMCA.
Oh, yeah.
But all of a sudden they're just like stuffing everybody.
Stuart Scott, get that out of here!
You won't sign the permission slip!
There is something super humorous about adults jokingly playing really hard against kids.
Well,
we saw this as well in...
I saw this over the weekend, bro, at girl dad camp.
Like, for real?
We're playing ultimate frisbee, dads and daughters, and there's this dude catching everything that should be going to the girls in the end zone, and I'm like, bro.
Come on, man. Come on. Well, it's like Peyton Manning with his clinic of with kids for Saturday Night Live. Like, that's really funny, right?
He's like giving him a tattoo.
Super funny. Yes. Fortunately for all of you, you're not in really, really big trouble with our dodgeball skills.
Yeah, you are.
But you are all in tune for a loaded show lineup. Does BYU football have a better shot of cracking into a New Year's Six bowl game this year compared to last year?
Oh, snap.
Think about it for a little while. Yeah, we're going to dive into that subject in about 5 minutes. And is BYU football ahead of schedule in fall camp? We'll ask our dual threat analyst, Blaine Fowler, that question. More on the Zach Wilson one-handed grab. It wasn't his only highlight of the weekend. And will Jaron Hall start every game this season? Or is Jacob Conover due for a start or two? Bring on today's BYU Sports Nation headlines.
Breaking sports news, the coaches poll is out, Spencer. The coaches poll is out.
Well.
And BYU's not in it. What? Come on, man. Okay, the Utes are 8th. Notre Dame's 5th, by the way. We like the AP poll here. Okay, Oregon's 12th. Arkansas's 23rd. Baylor, 10th.
No BYU in
Brigham.
the coaches poll, in the glorified sports information directors poll.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
How many votes did BYU get, Jarom? Where are they in the others
BYU's
receiving votes column? Okay, number 29 in the coaches poll.
What we were going for, top 30. Okay, fall camp continues for the football team. They practice Saturday. They're going to practice today as well, of course. Follow BYU Sports Nation on Twitter for live post-practice interviews at about 2:30 Eastern time. And of course, you can catch those on demand on BYU Sports Nation Twitter as well.
We'll hear how everyone is super salty about not being ranked in the first coaches poll.
The disrespect.
Puka Nacua and Clark Barrington, respected, named 4th-team preseason All-Americans according to Pick 6 previews. And Kingsley Suamataia named the 6th most talented transfer entering the 2022 season in college football. That according to 24/7 Sports. We love the preseason accolades, unless you're not in the top 25.
Unless you're not in. Women's soccer held its blue and white scrimmage Saturday. White team won 2-0, starting off with a goal by Bella Felino.
Oh, what a pass, Felino! And the first goal of the match!
What a great assist coming from Bailey, and then Felino so coolly puts it away.
An assist from one of those 7 freshmen. A lot of those are hoping to make an impact this year.
Yeah, there's some really talented freshmen. Super exciting. BYU plays an alumni game Wednesday, and then they're at North Carolina in an exhibition. Big-time exhibition to really test their mettle early coming up later in the week.
Top 10 showdown, right? Woo. They're doing a promotional event in Chapel Hill to get more people there.
For an exhibition.
Even though it's an exhibition.
I bet the students aren't on campus yet, so that's probably right.
Yeah, they know who's coming to town, right? Defending national
Brigham.
up. Let's go.
Brigham.
Jarom, it's time that we mention our friends on the golf course. Specifically, former BYU golfers Patrick Fishburne and Peter Quest. Fishburne finished tied for 2nd, and Quest tied for 5th at the Utah Championship. Daniel Summerhays finished tied for 30th. Carson Lundell did not make the cut. Hey, some Cougs on the links doing some work. Patrick Fishburne is on the cusp of getting his PGA Tour card. If he can pick up a few wins or a win on the Korn Ferry Tour, he's very, very close. And Peter Quest isn't far behind him, so it'd be nice to see a couple of guys get back on the PGA Tour.
This is golf school.
Hey, just maybe the Live Tour opens up more opportunities for guys like Patrick Fishburne and Peter Quest to get their tour cards, right?
Yeah, guaranteed. That might even be tithing-free money. Depends on your ethics.
All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending.
You're talking about it, and so are we. It's What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation.
What's Trending, sponsored by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event. BYU football 10-2 in the regular season a year ago.
Yeah, let's phrase it like that. I like that.
Yeah, I finished 10-3, but 10-2. The reason I bring up 10-2 is because with that 10-2 mark, they went into conference championship weekend watching with big eyes to see if just maybe there was a path that would get them into a New Year's Six game. Of course, the Cougars needed Oklahoma State to beat Baylor.
1 foot away.
1 foot away. Baylor wins. Baylor goes to the Sugar Bowl. BYU does not get into the New Year's Six game. They go to the Independence Bowl, and who cares what happens after that? Who cares what happens after that?
We're going to a Power 5. We weren't motivated.
It was a winning season overall, okay? 10-2 in the regular season and a Power 5 invite. Doesn't matter what happened in the bowl game.
Pac-12 champs.
The question is, does BYU, with what we think is a more veteran, dare I say better team than last year, have a better chance at making a New Year's Six bowl game this season than they did last season?
No, and it's not even close.
Not even close?
Not even close.
Wow.
It's a logistical thing, Spence.
Okay.
There are 3 bowls that have at-large bids. 2 of those are the semifinals. So you have one at-large spot this year, because the other will go to a Group of 5 team. It's in the Cotton Bowl. So it ain't happening because the Rose, Orange, and Sugar are going to have their conference affiliations. Now, there could be, there's not a strong showing from the Big 12 this year. And, they don't have a second at-large, perhaps. Maybe. But chances are no. So BYU probably has to go 11-1 just to be in the conversation this year. 10-2 wouldn't do it because of fewer at-large spots. But also, I think this schedule is tougher. You don't have the lowly Pac-12 to run through and go 5-0. I kid, the Pac-12's good. But, BYU took care of business, right? And it was a strong year for the Pac-12. Look at who won the league. Then you have 4 preseason top 25 teams. They're not going to pan out to be 4 in the top 25 when the season ends, probably. But, you're playing a really tough schedule, obviously, with Baylor and Oregon and Arkansas and Notre Dame that notably stick out. A stat of interest, BYU has played 81 teams who won at least 10 games in a season historically. Okay. 15 wins among those 81. I'd like that to be a little higher, right? But the point is, when you play a team that ends up being good, it's hard to beat them. How many of those 15 were Power 5 teams? Okay, now Power 5 is a modern term. Utah last year is one of them. The other is 90 Miami. That's it. If Notre Dame is a 10-plus win team, it's hard to beat them because they're really good. Well, wait, we beat them in 04 and 94. It's because they were 6-win teams those years, right? Well, what about Oklahoma when they were ranked 3rd? They were 8-5. What about Pitt in 84? They were 3-7-1. You need some teams to not be as good as you thought they were. I hope Oregon's not as good as people think they are. I hope Baylor's not that good. Notre Dame's going to be good. It's whether it's 10, 11, or 12 wins for them typically. So that's the hope. I hope Arkansas is a 8-5 team, not a 10-3 team this year. Then you have a better shot at getting them. So that's what we hope for. Unfortunately, there are fewer at-large spots. available for this in the New Year's Six. BYU's going to be good, but our hope is that, okay, BYU can go do what it did to, like, Arizona State was ranked at the time, but they end up 8-5, that kind of thing.
At least BYU beat the defending Pac-12 champion Utah Utes head-to-head a year ago.
The Pac-12 champs lost to the Pac-12 champs, if you will.
The Pac-12 de facto,
the de facto
South Division champions.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it comes down to just the number of available spots, and it's a rotating discussion year in and year out. So, and you correct me if I'm wrong, again, with 2 at-large spots available and 1 going to automatically the Group of 5 representative, unless another Power 5 conference has a poor showing, as you pointed out, we're looking at, okay, maybe 2 spots, okay? Maybe, right?
1?
Depending on
There's 1 at-large, Spence. That's reserved for an at-large team. So BYU has to out-at-large SEC 3. So best SEC team's probably in the playoffs.
Because who's locked in? Like,
it's
the college football playoff is taking 2 bowl games automatically. Those are the 4 spots.
Fiesta and Peach.
Okay, so the Fiesta and Peach.
Which traditionally are 2 at-large in each.
All
so
right.
that's where it's tough. Yeah.
So the Fiesta does not have an immediate tie to any conference.
Correct.
Year in and year out.
They're an at-large bowl game. That's
Peach
why
Bowl,
BYU's always been associated with that bowl game. As
right.
another.
The Peach Bowl has kind of become, in some ways,
it's a Big 12 SEC game. Typically.
Yeah, we've seen a group of 5 team end up in the Peach Bowl before. Western Michigan played in the Peach Bowl.
Yeah,
like they can maneuver some spots depending on the year.
I think they were cotton against Penn State that year.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it just kind of depends. This is not a great year to try an at-large.
Last year felt like the year. Right?
Yes.
Last year felt like the year because there were just an ample amount of spots available to crack into the New Year's.
There are 3 of the 6 that have conference affiliations for both teams. When those are the semis, that's a good at-large year. You get a chance there. So BYU has to out-at-large Big 10, 2-3, SEC 2-3.
Here's how BYU takes that last spot. 1, obviously, you got to be ranked in the top 12, right? Like, it feels like you have to be in the top 12.
And that won't necessarily even do it.
Okay?
Because of the few.
Correct. Just saying, like if you want to be in the conversation,
so we're saying
top 12 team.
We're saying 11-1 with that.
Okay, top 12 team. Well, I mean, they were 10-2 last year with a perceived weaker schedule than this year. I think 10-2 would put you right back where you were last year, like 11, 12-ish, but against a tougher schedule. So does that carry more weight? However, because there's only 1 spot, you have to be ranked higher than an Ole Miss situation.
Then the 3rd best SEC team.
Ole Miss was the 3rd best SEC team last year, and they were clearly in under Lane Kiffin. So it really comes down to BYU versus 3rd best SEC or the 2nd best Big 12 team.
Or 3rd best Big 10. Like
how good is the Big 10 this year? And how
really
many?
Hard.
Well, the thing is, but here's the thing: if your conferences, if you get into the college football playoff, let's say the SEC puts in 2 teams in the college football playoff, Jarom.
They're not obligated.
Then the 3rd goes to the automatic tie-in with the SEC, thus opening another at-large spot, right? So it all depends on how many teams from a conference, and we think there will be 2 from the SEC, right? Probably Georgia and Alabama, because that's what happens every year. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a good thing for BYU. If you get the SEC with 2 teams in the college football playoff, then that opens up another at-large spot. So you got to probably be better than the 3rd best SEC team.
Well, pieces shifted that
or
point, too.
You have to have 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff, opening up a perceived at-large, 2nd at-large spot.
Yeah, and pieces move, right? Like, okay, there's 2 SEC, the Sugar, this team. Well, how did the Big 10 fare? How did the Big 12 fare? Is the Pac-12 actually, are they good enough to produce 2 New Year's Six teams?
No.
If you got your Rose Bowl team, right? And then you got the second team.
That will be the case for the Pac-12 again, is they'll have someone in the Rose Bowl.
This is a terrible year to try and at large. Now, the good news is, starting next year, if BYU is in the Big 12 championship game, it's got a great shot at making a New Year's Six game. That's what it takes. The 3rd team from the Big 12 doesn't typically go to a New Year's Six game. But if you can be the 1st or 2nd best team, obviously if you're best team in the Big 12, you're going to a New Year's Six game. You may even go to the playoff if you're that good, right?
Sure.
Depends. But next year, BYU finally has access to this in a way that it has not had ever.
Sure.
Now, and next year is not the year for BYU. 24 on. Next year is a rebuild, most likely, for BYU.
Well,
But we're in on this year.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Let's hope that BYU is replacing their quarterback next year, because that means Jaron Hall has a fantastic year.
I want it to be a rebuild.
He goes to the NFL.
Because I want this year to be amazing. I want this year to be amazing.
Jaron Hall's back next year.
Is next year.
If Jaron Hall comes back next year,
it means he got hurt.
Something's gone wrong.
I don't want.
Something has gone wrong. You would think.
Frankly, I almost don't want him because I want this year to be so good. Does that make sense?
The question is, do they have a better chance of making a New Year's Six game? I think BYU has a better overall team than they did last year.
But they don't have a better chance because of the logistics of the bowl setup.
And I'm not even buying in the schedule's a little bit tougher, but because BYU is a better team, the schedule's tougher. I feel like it's a wash. It just comes down to number of available spots.
Which are fewer, so it's harder.
So they do not have a better chance based on logistics.
Yeah.
But root for the SEC to put 2 in the college football playoff, open up another at-large spot, and at a minimum 10-2, then BYU will, quote-unquote, be in the conversation.
11-1, you're really in it. And that even then, that might not be enough.
Just take care of business on September 3rd, please. In how many days?
Countdown to the Bulls.
26 days. 26 days away, under 4 weeks.
Feels like it's closer, but it's not close. We still have a ways, right? We got some stuff.
We were counting this thing down from 200 plus. So
we did 300 plus. When we first rolled this out in 2014, we started in January. Like 300 something.
No, yeah. Well, logistically, that would have been 9 months. It was 260 something. 260 or something like that. It was Connecticut, countdown to the Huskies.
It was fun then. It's been 8 years.
26 days away from game number 1. Our question of the day, do you think BYU has a better chance at making a New Year's Six bowl game this season compared to last season? Let's go to Voice of the Nation.
This is the Voice of the Nation on BYU Sports Nation.
At BY Uniforms on Twitter says,
I get it.
Not realistically, but maybe BYU gets a good location this year and offsets the worst bowl experience I've ever had. It was pretty miserable in Shreveport. It was pouring, it was cold, it was windy,
BYU loses.
And BYU ended up losing.
A reminder that BYU is a bowl free agent. Now, BYU is not going to go to a bowl that isn't owned by ESPN.
Hawaii Bowl.
It's going to
Hawaii Bowl
go again. That was
New Year's Eve.
That was a great bowl setup.
Sorry.
Until the game.
Christmas Eve this year.
Yeah.
Slated again, just like it was the last time they were.
We caught a red eye. We were out of there.
The Hawaii Bowl
game.
is slated for Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve in paradise, anyone? Hawaii Bowl as a fallback if you don't get into New Year's Six?
Let's just stay this time. Why'd we leave so fast?
Take the family. It'd be super cheap, right? Hashtag BYUSN Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Hashtag per diem ain't paying for that. Coming up, maybe Taylor Sanders' best spike ever. We'll show you.
Oh, volleyball love. And Blaine Fowler joins us next. What does he think about BYU's New Year's Six chances this season? Is he higher than we are on the logistics? This is BYU Sports Nation.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event.
They prefer to be bringing the heat, getting set for success, demonstrating their drive. But when their blood and sweat turns to tears or anything else, we lay the groundwork for BYU's athletes to hit the ground running again, and you as well. Intermountain Healthcare, official medical provider for BYU Athletics.
Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork offers a large inventory of Ford vehicles, including a selection of cars and trucks, providing a range of transportation choices. From the Ford Fusion sedan and the Edge crossover SUV to a range of pickups including the F-150. Each product line comes with options to enhance performance, comfort, and safety. Think Ford, Think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork.
Broadway? What about our future plans? This could be our future. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go to Broadway!
Kermit is gone! He's disappeared!
He's disappeared?
We're gonna have to rehearse day and night to get ready, and we have got to find Kermit.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Tomorrow, check out After Further Review, 7 Eastern on the BYUtv app as the guys preview players like Malik Moore, Caleb Hayes, D'Angelo Mandel, and others as we get ready for the season.
We are live in Studio C. This is your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton, teamed up with Jarom Jordan. I just had another epiphany during the break in our New Year's 6 conversation and BYU's chances to crack in.
Place of revelation.
Notre Dame can absolutely not be involved, Jarom, because they're another independent.
Well, BYU can control that.
If BYU, maybe that's a New Year's 6 play and a bracket buster.
Oh, my gosh.
On October 8th.
It's a quarterfinal.
Yeah, Notre Dame cannot be involved because if Notre Dame's taking a spot, good night, it's all over. Right? They're just like, it's not happening. That would be the at-large spot. So 2 SEC in the college football playoff, Notre Dame not in the mix.
They have like a pseudo connection.
Once every 5 years with the ACC in the Orange Bowl?
Yeah, it's like.
Something like that?
Yeah, Orange. It's ACC versus Big Ten, SEC, or Notre Dame.
Okay. Well, it wouldn't be ACC versus Notre Dame because, regardless.
Could be, yeah. No,
regardless,
could be.
Just root against Notre Dame. That not only in the game, but like to be in that conversation. That will, quote-unquote, help BYU.
I think that's pretty easy for this fan base to get behind.
Joining us now
no
is our
problem.
dual threat analyst. He is an excellent insider of BYU football information. Blaine Fowler is with us once again. Uncle B, welcome back to the show.
What's up, guys? Hey, I agree with that whole with what you just said, Spencer. And I think we root for Notre Dame, but we root from the trip up like twice, and one of those is when they play BYU. We want them.
Yeah.
We want them like just outside of consideration. So we want them like 9-3, and we want one of those 3 losses to BYU, and then BYU goes 10+, and then all of a sudden that Notre Dame win does a couple of things. It in essence knocks them out and puts BYU in, but we need them to be good so that win looks good for BYU. So I get your logic, but we can't root against them. We just need to root against them just a couple more times other than the BYU game.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and if Notre Dame goes 10+ wins, they're a really good team. That'd be an amazing win. There's not a ton of those type of wins where you go Power 5, that team won 10+. Like, it's Miami and it's Utah from what I looked at all time in BYU history. It's hard to get those wins. Coaches poll, no BYU in it. We like to make fun of that poll because it's the sports information director's poll. But were you surprised BYU wasn't in it?
That's a true statement, and yes, I was surprised they were in it. With what BYU has coming back, folks that actually look at it would just go, they're at least a top 25 team to start the season. So I'm a little bit surprised, but as you guys have mentioned, that poll is not one that a lot of research is done. I feel like the AP poll does more. Like the AP voters actually go look up the teams and read a little bit about, and they go, "Oh man, they've got a potential draft pick quarterback coming back that was really good this last year. They got all these linemen coming back. Puka Nakua's back. Most of their defense is back. Yeah, this was a ranked team last year. Yeah, they're somewhere in there. Maybe I put them at 23. So any reasonable human that studied a shred would have them in their top 25.
Blaine Fowler is with us on BYU Sports Nation. The Cougars, we think, need to win at least 10 games, Blaine. So let's stay on that line of conversation and the New Year's 6 chances for BYU. Where do you think BYU's shot legitimately falls in terms of comparing it to last year? Do you feel like because BYU is a perceived better team, even though there are fewer spots available, that BYU has a better shot to crack into the New Year's 6, or is it just logistically too tough?
I do think it's logistically tough, but I think this schedule sets up fine. I actually think the P5s that BYU plays this year have a chance to be overall better than the P5. Even though they played one more last year, I feel like based on who's coming back on all these, remember, this is based on actually some research, right? Unlike the coaches poll, that the schools that BYU has on the schedule, by and large, they all have a chance to be good. So I don't see any where these teams go and just fall on their faces. I hate to downgrade the team that I played on in '84, but Pittsburgh fell on their face after we played them, right? They weren't who they were supposed to be. I don't see these teams falling on their face. Well, Stanford is going to be who they are. I actually think they may be better than people are giving them credit for. The rest of that schedule, I feel like, are going to be teams that are good and have 8-9 wins. And so I think BYU has a chance to have a much stronger at the end of year strength of schedule and some wins against some quality opponents. You already talked about Notre Dame, who may be the best of all of those. I think Oregon's a big opportunity. I think they match up fine with Oregon. And Oregon, in a really weak North Pac-12 this year, has a chance to look really, really good. So if they get to 10 wins based on this year's the teams that they're playing that are P5s, I think they'll be ranked higher than they were last year at that same, when BYU was knocking on the door. And I always feel like if you go back and look historically, when is BYU special? When do they get 10 or 11 wins? It's typically when they have a returning starting quarterback that's experienced, that everybody's considered a high-level NFL-type talent, and when they have a bunch of linemen coming back. When that combination happens at the same time, they're usually good. Those are the seasons that produce 10-plus wins. And I look at this offensive line, it's as deep and as big and as nasty and as talented as maybe they've ever had. That's some phenomenal offensive linemen, but as a group, I'm talking 10 deep. It's a big wow when you go out there and watch them. And then you have a quarterback in Jaron that I feel like already in fall ball just looks better than he's ever looked, and he's healthy, and that's a key, keep him healthy. You throw Puka Nacua out there, who's an NFL talent at wide receiver, Gunnar Romney, who's an NFL talent, a big group of tight ends that can all play. Chris Brooks, I think, is the real deal, but they're deeper than just Chris Brooks at running back. And all of a sudden you start to go, wait a minute, that's the formula typically for BYU to win 10. And so I think if they're 10-plus with this schedule and those teams do what they're supposed to do, BYU's going to have a stronger case this year than they had last year.
100%. And it'll be interesting because there's the give and the take of, well, if you beat these teams, typically they weren't as good as we thought. So BYU needs a couple of these teams to win 10-plus, and BYU wins. And this is a team that's ready for it, Blaine. This is a team that in 2018 and 19 goes 7-6 and go through their druthers so that in 2020, 21, and now 22, they can have a great year. You mentioned Jaron Hall. Obviously, having a great quarterback going into the year gives us a ton of confidence sitting here going, BYU's going to be good. It's just how good. What have you noticed from him in fall camp so far that makes you think he's taken a step up even from last year?
I just look at the decision-making. Like, he's always seemed really poised from day one, but sometimes early in his career, he looked poised, and I was just going, get it out, get the ball out. Come on, now he's there on the break. Go, go, go. And the ball would come out a little late. He was way better last year, but there were times I was like, oh, he's just a little too cautious. Get the ball into the middle of the field. That inside breaking route, it's there. Throw it. I felt like at the end of the year, he got even better at that. And I'm nitpicking here. But remember who I'm comparing him to, right? I'm comparing him to some of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game in college that played at BYU, the Steve Youngs and the Jim McMahons. But now this fall, all of a sudden, he has such a command of the offense, and he's so confident and on the same page with his guys that all of the throws were a year and a half ago, I was going, why doesn't he just get the ball out? The ball's coming out. It's on time. It's in a good spot. It's got tons of velocity on it. And I'm just thinking, man, he's to the point where I'm thinking, yep, this is an elite level player, because elite level players just don't have all the physical skills. He's always had that. Zach Wilson had that as a sophomore. Elite level players, then all of a sudden the decision-making process becomes so quick that they're way ahead of the defense and the ball's coming out before the defense can react. That's where I feel Jaron Hall is right now. That's the difference between great and really good.
Blaine Fowler is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Blaine, do you feel like at this point, BYU overall as a team, not just Jaron Hall, is ahead of schedule in training camp?
Yeah, I feel like because defensively there's some guys that are stepping up that we weren't really talking about much going in. Coming out of spring, there's a little bit of buzz, but there's some guys where I had questions. Like at linebacker, I had questions, and Kavika Gagne is one example where you're just going, "Whoa, this dude is giving him some depth." I didn't even mention his name last year coming off of an injury, and all of a sudden I'm going, "This guy can rotate in and play." Like he's going to be really, really good. And then Peely was a guy that I was like, is his mind going to turn on? Is he going to be able to play full speed? And as of 3 practices in, it's like, oh, baby. I watched him in a drill, which was a welcome to college football to the freshman he was going against drill, come up, 2-hand arm shiver where the freshman tight end's head snapped back. And he just dropped him to his knees and defended the run. And I thought, oh, baby, that's what BYU missed last season against the run when he got hurt and wasn't in there. Just a tough as nails inside run defender that people aren't going to knock off the ball, that's going to step up in the line of scrimmage and make it tough to run. So he's a pleasant surprise at where he is coming back from that knee. Nobody ever talks about Ammon Hanneman. And everybody's like, well, the safeties, and I'm watching him at strong safety going, this dude can flat out play. Have you ever met a Hanneman that's not a crazy athlete? They just don't.
It's fair.
Don't have them. Like, they don't raise kids that aren't not so crazy athletes. And Ammon is right in that mold. And I feel like the light bulb's coming on for him where he's really understanding where he's supposed to be. And I think he's going to have a breakout where he's going to be really good and could man that strong safety spot. And have we even been talking about Ammon Hanneman? I know I haven't, but I feel like we should be talking about him now because I think he's going to have a big impact. And John Nelson, I think, is playing phenomenal and he can play inside or outside on that D-line. The D-line's way deeper than I thought they were. And then the one that's really standing out is Gabe Judy, the transfer at corner. And I'm just looking, going, just go watch one-on-ones and see who can cover. And all of a sudden you go, whoa, you've got D'Angelo Mandel, you've got Caleb Hayes, you got Jacob Robinson who's playing corner now, you've got Gabe Judy. You're going, that's 4 really good face press man cover guys that can cover people all over the field. And I love their mentality. In spring ball, I watched this and I see it carried to the fall. D'Angelo Mandel, he just takes a rep. And he's going back to get on his knee and have a rest or to walk over and rest. It's not, he'll be back in 3 or 4 rotations. And then Puka Nacua comes up to the front of the line and D'Lo goes, oh no, hey, I got him. He wants to go against the best on the offense that there is. And Puka wants to go against him. So I see these elite players and I feel like that attitude carries over and D'Lo's examples carried over. That's what Gabe wants to do. And that's what Robinson wants to do, and that's what Hayes wants to do, who's a really, really good lockdown cover guy. And so all of a sudden there's this mentality of confidence at that corner position. And when you have 4 guys like that, and they have more than just those 4, but they're 4 really good cover guys, man, you can do a lot of things defensively that you maybe haven't done in the last couple of years when you have that kind of confidence. So I think the defense is way better than I thought they were going into camp. Now that I look at it as a whole, we knew the offense was going to be good, and they're going to be good. If they're not a top 10 offense, then I'll be very disappointed if they're not a top 10 offense. Defense, there were some questions, and I'm getting some answers early that make me feel really good that this team can be a special kind of a team.
He is our dual threat analyst. Blaine, for the record, you are way ahead of schedule in fall camp, my friend, but that's not a surprise.
No, don't you remember, Spencer, what I said I was going to lose 10 pounds by fall camp?
I remember that.
I've been in the gym like crazy. I've been doing all kinds of exercises, and the one exercise I have been neglecting terribly is push-aways, meaning push away from the table, push away from the refrigerator, push away from the cabinet at 9:30 at night. It's the one exercise that I have neglected in my off-season work, and I don't care how many bench presses I do or how many squats. Until I get push-aways into my regular routine, I'm just going to stay the fat guy that I am. That's all there is to it.
Here's to strength for pushing away, Blaine. Thanks for the time, my friend.
All right, guys. I appreciate it.
Blaine Fowler on BYU Sports Station. He's the best.
The push-aways. Shout out to Gennaro Guilford for developing that group to where they are talented and deep, and we're excited to watch the corners, right?
It was such an interesting dynamic, and we're going to get to watch a little bit of practice again today, but to watch the secondary go against BYU's offense, like, because Jaron Hall is protected, so, like, he's not being super pressured, but he has nowhere to throw the ball downfield.
It's hard.
So it's just like this long developing play, no pressure on the quarterback, but nowhere to throw.
When there's a check down, which he told us is annoying to have to throw. Well, he likes to check down if it's there, right? But, like, to throw against 8 is tough. Okay, coming up, what was the best Zach Wilson play of the weekend?
You know, Gunnar Romney has caught a lot of passes from Jaron Hall in his career and quite a few in fall camp. But did he just make his best catch of this fall camp? You'll answer that next. This is BYU Sports Nation.
I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be doubted, to fly under the radar. I only had one offer coming out of high school, but I was ready for every moment, every opportunity, and every shot that I got. Now I'm playing professional basketball, aiming to be one of the best shooters on the planet. And I'm just getting started. Be ready for your moment with Rapid Reboot, the future of rapid recovery.
Professor Rock here.
The Food Nanny.
Chandler Scott here.
Samry.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
I just want to tell you about this amazing,
excellent,
Cool account called My Style.
My Style checking. I'm talking travel points.
Gift card. Concert tickets.
All just for using my account.
That's My Style.
So check it out.
Give it a shot.
Open your My Style checking account today.
BYUtv has let the dogs out with a full lineup of stories featuring your favorite canines. Simply download the free BYUtv app to watch movies and shows about pups that'll make you laugh, hounds that'll make you cry, and pooches that bring families together. Hungry for more? Catch thousands of satisfying shows you and your family can enjoy together on the free BYUtv app. Start streaming today.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
Interact with BYU Sports Nation on social media by following us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
He is Jarom and Spencer. Let's whip it. The Cougar Whip Round presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
BYU Football posted a Jaron Hall to Gunnar Romney highlight Saturday. Is this a catch?
Let's take a look.
It looks pretty good from Gunnar.
And, okay, so that angle, it looks like a catch.
Yeah, it looks
like a catch. Gets the pat on the back from D'Lo. That's good coverage by D'Lo, too.
Crawley.
Right. Yay! Is the ball trapped on the ground between his legs as well? Like, does the nose of the ball hit the ground? Because if the nose of the ball hits the ground, then it's probably not a catch. So that angle you can't tell. But after further review, Jarom, that angle right there makes me think that that's probably getting
we're going back. We're going back.
Probably getting overturned as...
Right. Or is his left hand under?
Is his left hand under?
His two hands are up. It falls down. I think that's incomplete.
It all depends on what was called on the field. If it was called a catch, there's not enough evidence to overturn that.
This is fall camp. It's a catch.
Okay. Yeah, if that's called a catch in camp, there's not enough evidence video replay to say that it's not.
This was a road game at Oregon. It was Pac-12 refs. That's definitely a catch. Okay?
Just across the way from where BYU football is practicing, Jim McMahon a couple of weeks ago had an interview with Eli Manning, and Jim posted a photo and a still shot from Eli's places while Eli was wearing a headband in LaVell Edwards Stadium like McMahon rather.
It says ESPN Plus.
What would you write on your headband in a picture with Jim McMahon?
Allow beards at BYU. That's what I want.
Yeah. If it's a picture with Jim, mine would probably say honor code, right?
Honor code.
Come on.
Did you see the Bodie tweet that Bodie retweeted of Jim with like a big old case of beer? It said, "Hey, we can't have this at this party," as Jim McMahon carried the beer away from the party to the trash can.
Yeah. That was the first thing that popped in my mind. I was like, well, what? Honor code.
Yeah, honor code.
Probably what I would do.
1810. Oregon announced it wants its fans to wear yellow to the BYU game, meaning they're probably wearing yellow, right? What would be a good combo for BYU to wear in that game?
If Oregon goes with the highlighter yellows, for sure BYU should go with something predominantly blue.
Highlighter blue.
I would think that it's probably navy, just so like they're easier to see. Like so for Jaron Hall as the quarterback, you want his sight lines to be clean and clear and like have no, confusion about the defense. So if they're in yellow, go with the navies on that green field, right?
And it's a day game, by the way. It's going to be bright. It's going to be warm in September. I agree. Navy needs to be the color. The shirt specifically.
If they go highlighter
if they go
yellow,
navy helmet, it doesn't necessarily matter.
That's fine. Yeah, navy top is the most important, right?
Yeah.
You go white pants, navy top.
Navy. We went navy today.
Just go navy if they're indeed wearing highlighter.
By the way, we talk about wardrobe, once a year maybe?
We talk about the tuxedos on Y Awards Day.
Well, that one's obvious. But we don't talk about what the other's wearing that
Media Day.
Sometimes we wear the same shirt and I'm like, no!
No, the wardrobes are so extensive, it's really tough to end up in the same shirt.
I wish mine were more.
No, with BYU gear as well.
Oh, with BYU gear. Yeah.
So much BYU gear. Like that's why it's an anomaly. Okay, on we go. The New York Jets tweeted out 3 separate highlights from Zach Wilson over the weekend. His one-handed catch that we already showed you. His Odell Beckham, if you will. A no-look flip to wide receiver Garrett Wilson, which the Jets said, the Wilsons! And a handoff to
Wilson!
A young Jets fan with cerebral palsy, scored a touchdown. Team celebrated around the kid. Oh, an emotional moment. What was the best Jets highlight of the weekend featuring Zach Wilson?
The handoff's certainly amazing. To me, it's the dodgeball moment. That pick is like nice. And here you see the handoff.
Like this is
to AJ.
Undoubtedly the feel-good, emotional, most important, most impactful moment of the weekend.
Awesome.
But in terms of just straight-up football highlight,
and let's hope the Jets can open those kind of lanes. You know what I'm saying?
They need to.
Go.
They need to if they're going to win at least 7 games.
Approximate the playoffs at least.
Yeah, the one-handed catch is the most impressive.
Yeah.
That feel-good moment, that takes the show, right?
Of course.
That's the whole thing.
Of course. Bella leading returning score for the women's soccer team. Scored first in Saturday's blue and white scrimmage, as seen right here on the BYUtv app. Over/under 12.5 goals this season.
Now, keep in mind, Michaela Coulihan and Cameron Tucker went for 18 and 16 individually last year. Wow. #1 scoring offense in the country. Bella was at 9. Yeah, I think she's going to be just over 12 and a half. Like, I think she can get to 13 for sure.
Nice.
Which would be a huge season.
I'll go just a hair under. She's going to get 12.
Okay.
There will be some nice distribution among Brecken Mozingo, and Rachel McCarthy's going to have a breakout year, I think, is kind of that Cam Tucker forward. So
I hope so.
I think there will be a nice distribution of like 3 or 4 players that go 10+.
It'd be nice to have 2 go 10+. Then BYU's really in business again as a top 10 team.
2 will go 10+. I'm pretty confident.
It's going to take that type of performance for BYU to stay in the elite echelon of the rankings. Okay, Jarom, back to men's volleyball, because it's been a while since we've gone there, and specifically for our boy Taylor Sander. Is this his best spike ever?
This is so he's playing beach now with Taylor Crabb.
Watch
from Long Beach State. Watch this. Ta-da!
Okay.
That's inside the 10-foot line, if you will. And he kind of stares down at his opponent. Yeah. It might be. Let me tell you about one that just to thump it off the sand into the stands is amazing. So one time Taylor, as a player at BYU, hit a ball so hard off of someone trying to dig it that it went to the ceiling and wedged itself in there during a match. Wow. I've never seen that since in like 14 years of doing games.
So maybe that's his best ever?
I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe his best ever.
But inside 10, off the sand.
There's like a gajillion like pipes that he's hit.
Ooh.
One time he had 8 kills in the 5th set against USC. They played to 15. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah, that
so fun.
That one's pretty sweet.
So fun.
The one on the that's
pretty good, dude.
Pretty sweet.
Okay, coming up, Rise and shout out to an incredible event on camp.
And let's play some more over-under. We just did over-under on goal scored at Bella Felino. Let's take that to the BYU football camp.
All right.
And tackle a number of big-time subjects. No pun intended. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Quick crack. Wash all you want. Don't drive dirty.
Hi, Spencer Linton here, letting you know when your company joins the BYU team as a corporate partner, your brand can be featured in sports programming on BYU TV and BYU Radio. In addition to all of the great games, you can be part of the BYU coaches shows, place your message in Countdown to Kickoff, basketball pre- and post-game shows, and each weekday on BYU Sports Nation. We invite your team to join ours and become a corporate sponsor of BYU Athletics. For details, email sponsorship@byu.edu today.
Trio Orem Senior Living believes in empowering seniors to live life to the fullest. We help eliminate stress out of daily life when you live at Trio. Less time focusing on housework means you can socialize at one of our many events, with safety in mind, of course. And did we mention our spacious apartments with modern amenities? Learn more about setting up a private tour at trioorem.com.
This is BYU Football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they care.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
BYU football's practicing today. You can watch post-practice interviews at about 2:30 Eastern Time on BYU Sports Nation's Twitter. It will be there on demand as well.
Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. We are live in Studio C. It's time to play Fall Camp Over-Under right now. Again, we've discussed the goal scoring for Bella Felino of BYU Women's Soccer, so let's take it to football camp now with the Cougars. Jarom, I'll start it off with Chris Brooks, and we bring in some highlights from fall camp that you can watch while we discuss these hot ticket items, I should say. Chris Brooks.
Oh, a little option there to Chris Brooks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris Brooks mode activated.
Gary Cronin, is that you?
Hey, Jarom, Chris Brooks will have over or under 1,250 yards of total offense this season.
I love that number because I think he's going to be around there. I'll go over by a hair because Tyler Algier had 200 yards, well, almost 200 yards receiving last year, not to mention the 1,600. I think he's a 1,000-yard rusher, if not more, if not 1,100, and then he's got 100 to 200 receiving yards. So I like that number, and he goes over.
Yeah, it's going to be just over. I feel like Chris Brooks behind that offensive line is going to average, he'll probably average 100 yards a game rushing. If he averages 100 yards a game rushing, then that's 1,200 yards right there.
That's a high average for me. I think he's probably in like the 80-90 range.
Okay.
A game.
Even if he's at 90.
To get to 1,100, yeah, 100 a game, you're going.
I mean, 12 games times averaging 90 yards a game is 1,080 yards for the season.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right?
He's like in the 1,100 range. Listen, if he's healthy, if Jaron's healthy, if the O-line's healthy,
over.
Yeah, he can go into that.
That's no definitely an over for me.
Okay, Chase Roberts, redshirt freshman receiver, will have over under 15 catches this year.
Man, this one's tough, and I had to kind of play a comparison in my mind where I was like, okay, he's going to be a freshman. He's coming off of his mission. He looks great. Gunnar Romney had 13 catches.
Did you see what just happened after that?
Yeah.
He catches it, and then he goes to, celebrate to the defender.
Yeah, that's okay.
Ready? Here. Yeah!
Well, that's a freshman move, right?
That's hilarious. Redshirt freshman.
Okay, Gunnar Romney had 13 catches his freshman season. but Chase is more developed in the program,
Yeah.
and so I think that he's going to go just over 15 catches this season.
I go over because 7 players had 18-plus last year. We think he's going to be in the top 7, right?
For sure.
I think it's fair to think he's 18 to 25.
How many? Yeah, the tight ends. Okay, so if you've got 2 tight ends that go 15-plus, then Nakua and Hill and Gunnar Romney and Cody Epps.
Like, he can be in that range.
Yeah.
He can be on the
I think he'll be just over 15.
He'll be in there.
Okay. All right. The BYU run defense, Jarom, 81st in the country last year in yards per carry allowed.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about, hey, just getting like the top 50, okay, in total defense. Specifically, though, in yards per carry allowed, will BYU be over or under number 50 in the country this season?
Top 50, yes. They'll get to that. If not, that's tough. BYU still went 10-3 despite that. Just think what happens if BYU can control the line of scrimmage a little bit better against Baylor, against UAB, right? Boise State was
certainly
a turnover
against
fest.
Boise State.
Wasn't a big issue against Boise State, frankly. That was more a turnover game. But Baylor, you're probably always going to lose that game. That was tough. But UAB, it makes a big difference. Yeah, I say top 50.
I feel like that's a pretty significant jump, you know, when you look, man, 31 spots, but it's all exactly. So,
it's
like, you think 31 spots, that's a lot, but it's only 0.4 yards. So, I think BYU's defensive front and their linebackers specifically filling those gaps are more capable this year. They will be around 50th. So, I think just under the 50.
In our
45 to 50.
Our super unbiased opinion here.
Frankly, if they're like top 60, it's still much better.
Top 60 works. Top half of college football. BYU offensive line will allow over under 10 sacks. That's an aggressive number.
Oh, man. I love the offensive line. If they can get, that's less than 1 sack a game against some really good opponents.
Yes, think of those D lines at Arkansas.
Well, I
Oregon,
love the offensive line. That's really aggressive. So I'm going to say that they'll allow over 10 sacks this season.
I'd say over as well. Last year was 15. The year before that was 12. Those are excellent numbers. The year before that was 28, dog. 28.
Yes.
So 10 is too, that's, no.
Against this schedule, it's too aggressive.
It's too aggressive because Notre Dame's going to get a sack or two. Okay. That's a safe assumption that they will get a sack or two.
Yeah, will Baylor, will Arkansas, will Oregon.
Arkansas, right? No.
Will Boise State on the road?
Will BYU allow fewer than 20 is probably a fair.
And I think that they will allow less than 20 sacks. Jacob Conover getting plenty of work in fall camp.
Number 2, baby.
Yeah, he's the clear number 2, we think.
No, he is.
Okay.
That's a fact.
Will he play in over 3.5 games this season? Just play in. Just play in.
Over, because he's going to mop up duty against Utah Tech, East Carolina, Liberty. We hope Boise State.
Man, Liberty, BYU is
Utah
only
State,
a 2-point favorite.
Wyoming.
Or 5-point favorite.
Like the final drive to kneel it out ain't a big deal if it's like a 2-score game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, play.
We hope BYU does not get blown out in any games and then he enters.
That's the tough. Yeah, the real question is
3.5 is low. No, he's playing in
will
4
he
plus.
This any games this season?
We hope 0.
That's what we're hoping for. Yeah.
Just frankly. And then next year, maybe he starts 13.
He'll take some snaps for sure. He'll play in over 3.5 games. Yeah. Let's hope it's just mop-up duty, though.
Yes, exactly. Coming up, who's going to get that elite voice of the day?
And a rise and shout-out to one of the best camp events BYU's athletics department holds all year. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Accidents don't just happen 9 to 5. They happen when you least expect them. The team at Siegfried & Jensen is here for you 24/7. Nights, weekends, every day, every hour. Really here for you. No matter when you call us, you'll speak to a real person and have access to the same expertise and personal attention as always, and get the legal help you need when you need it. Nights, weekends, every day, every hour, 24/7.
Learn more at siegfriedandjensen.com.
Gather the family for a midweek pick-me-up with an all-new lineup Wednesdays on BYUtv.
Is that cool? Is that okay?
You want inspiring? Yeah, we got that. Fun? Definitely. And surprising? Well, you'll just have to find out. Enjoy a marathon of good works to lift and inspire you for the rest of your week. See it all Wednesdays on BYUtv or anytime on the free app.
This is your guys' song. You deserve...
Our goal, 50,000 books in the hands of children.
Okay, and I can help. Why do you do this? What do you get out of this?
It needs hope, and you need to show that little bit of love.
When you lay down your head. People come here one way, and they change while they're here. It was so great to be a part of it.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
BYU Sports Nation is on demand. You can download the free BYU TV and BYU radio apps and subscribe, rate, and view to the podcast as well.
Our question of the day, does BYU have a better chance at making a New Year's Six bowl game this season compared to last season? It came down to championship weekend, 1 yard short of BYU having a window potentially into that
I would say a foot.
Man,
like it was so close, right? Oklahoma State.
Inches.
Inches. Didn't get it.
At 86 WI Cougar on Twitter answers, BYU would need to go 11-1 to have a shot at a New Year's Six, and that one loss would have to be against either Baylor, Notre Dame, or Oregon. A 10-2 BYU would fall just outside, just like last year.
Probably. And 11-1 might as well. Like we talked about, there were fewer New Year's Six at-large options because the Fiesta and Peach, which do 2 at-large each, 4 total, are the semifinals. So it is a hard year to get an at-large bid as a New Year's Six.
Yeah, the best case scenario we think, regardless of how it shakes out, is that there would be 2 at-large spots, right? There are a number of ways to make that happen. There's guaranteed 1. There are some things that could happen to open up a second. Like BYU is going to have a second at-large spot open up, and you're probably going to at least have 10 wins to be in the conversation.
12-0 ensures you're in the New Year's Six. You're in the playoff convo at that point. 11-1.
I think you're definitely in the New Year's Six. You're the at-large spot.
You are in a great spot. No guarantees that you're that team. 10-2, you're probably out.
You're 11-1, man. I think BYU would be the at-large.
Depends who you have to at-large, man. Don't forget, they're powerful entities.
You're 11-1. If you're 11-1, you're like a top 6 team, top 8 team, right? Right. You would
Depends
think.
Who's going? Yeah. I like your chances, but depends.
Our elite voice of the day, presented by Sundance Mountain Resort. Jonathan Hawk on Twitter says, yes, BYU's schedule will get more respect nationally this year since they play 4 teams that are in the preseason top 25, according to the coaches. 2 to 3 of the scheduled teams could be conference champions. As a result, BYU could lose 1 to 2 close games to better teams and still make a New Year's Six bowl. But again, it's just fewer spots. Unfortunately, it's just a worse shot, right? All right, Rise and Shout Out presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
Went to Girl Dad Camp. It was awesome. Thanks to Heather Olmstead, Diljit Taylor, Lee Camard, and everybody involved. It was fun to see. David Almodelva, Danny Bauer, Ben Murdoch, Bart Jepson, Fernando Pessoa, Jonathan Aleman, former athletes. So much fun there. So much fun.
Who danced the best, though? That's the real question. Everybody was posting about it. Who danced the best?
Not me, but it was fun.
It wasn't Brian Santiago either. Our thanks to today's guest, Blaine Fowler.
Sorry, Dennis. Ran out of time.
For Jarom and Spencer, follow BYU Sports Nation on social media, 2:30 Eastern for live post-practice interviews. See you then. Go Cougs.